What's up, y'all? Samuel here again. Back with another live stream. And I know this live stream, the topic of this live stream is going to be quite different from what I typically do. But I felt like it really was important for me to cover this and talk about this because growing up, something that I've always been told by my parents, by those around me, was that Black people, whether it's in America, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in the Caribbean, we really only have each other. And and when I was told this growing up, it just felt like that my parents are trying to be nice and whatever. But as I got older, I realized they were right. And remember, guys, you guys know that originally I came from West Africa, so this is West African parents telling me this. That really, wherever you go, son, Black people only have each other, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in the Caribbean, it doesn't matter. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that those statements are more truer than they could have been, right? I'm going to be talking about Asians today, the Asian community, the Asian diaspora, Asia, right? And the reason is because recently, right, we have been having this conversation about quote unquote anti-Asian hate and how quote unquote Asians are quote unquote being attacked and will face discrimination and quote unquote what will be looked down upon, right? There's a narrative that's being pushed up by the Asian community, right, in the Western world. We also talk about the Africa-China situation where the Chinese government is going to African nations, including my parents' home African nation, saying that, hey, we're friends, we're together, right? We're friends, right? So on one hand, you have Asians in the West talking about anti-Asian hate, and on a geopolitical level, you have Asians going to African nations, Black nations, saying that we're friends. And so if you don't know much about Asia and Asians and the culture and how they view other groups, it's easy for you to kind of fall into this dichotomy. But what I want to tell Black folks and with the world is that at the end of the day, what I tell Black folks in the world is that the reality when it comes to Asians is that many of them are extremely anti-Black. Many of them have a deep worship for lighter skin and for Europeans. And many of them really, if they had the choice, would essentially become Caucasian. Why does it matter, right? It matters because as we're starting to see China interact more and more with the African continent, as we're starting to see quote unquote Asians, overseas talking about anti-Asian hate, right? It's important for us to remind the Asian community how they look and how they treat people of darker skin. It's very important. Because if we don't talk about how they treat those of darker skin, especially Black folks within their own communities, whether it's in their home nations or whether it's in Asian communities around the world, it allows them to then go around and paint this narrative of anti-Asian hate, even though they're probably some of the most racist groups. I'm gonna give you an example, y'all. When you had the whole anti-Asian hate thing campaign here in America, right? The Asian community in the United States were taking images of Black Americans, quote unquote, attacking Asians, and they were just blasting these videos everywhere, all across social media, right? And the narrative that was being pushed, of course, was that, hey, Black Americans, right? Black folks were just anti-Asian, was attacking them, right? But when you actually looked at the stats, right, the FBI stats, what you actually saw was that no, the vast majority, close to over 50% of the attacks that are happening on Asians in the West are actually on white people, especially in America. So, okay, so if the stats and the data shows mainly white Americans who were attacking them, why is it that every time I search them on social media, all I see are videos of quote unquote Black Americans or Black folks attacking Asians, even though Asians have been in Black neighborhoods like forever? Well, the reason is very clear, right? Asian Americans and the Asian diaspora understands that they have been able to occupy this space that I call the model minority, in which we are not like those quote unquote Negroes over there, but we're also not white, right? So they're essentially able to use their Asian identity as a way to quote unquote escape the racism that Black Americans and sort of Black diaspora faces. And so they use the model minority status as a way to access whiteness. But what they don't understand is that the model minority status does not exempt you from not being white. It may give you more privileges than quote unquote darker skin people. It may give you more privileges than the average Black person, but it does not exclude you from not being white, right? And the crazy part is right now, Asians, really, in my opinion, all this anti-Asian hate rhetoric you're hearing about, it's not even really about quote unquote it's not even really about quote unquote attacks from Black Americans, right? Because they try to frame this narrative, even though it's really mostly whites. What it really comes down to is that Asians are very feared, right? That the model minority privileges that they have received from white people, not just in America, internationally, will be taken away. Let's be honest here, okay? People need to understand that when Asians first came to America, they were not viewed as a model minority. When Asians first came to America, they were not viewed as being quote unquote white adjacent. In fact, you literally had cases, right, of Asian Americans that were filing cases in the Supreme Court trying to classify themselves as white. And white America had to tell them, no, you guys are not white. You're with those Negroes over there. So for most of America's history, Asians have never been viewed as being quote unquote closer to white. Most of the time, they were discriminated against by the white society. In fact, you had the Chinese Exclusion Act. That's how they literally passed a whole law, on the national level to block Chinese from coming over here. It wasn't until Black Americans were able to get a Civil Rights Act through that white Americans then started to quote unquote change the narrative and change the image of Asians. And then they started to change the immigration quote unquote system, in which they started to import much more highly educated Asians from Asia, which changed the demographics of Asian United States. Before, most Asians here were just, poor migrants. They were the sort of equivalent of quote unquote Latinos, right? Poor migrant workers. It wasn't until after civil rights that white America changed the immigration system and was started to import more higher educated Asians, right? Which changed the demographics, making it seem as if Asians over here are just over dominated, but they're really not. The Asians over here are like the top 1% from their home countries. But the reason why this matters is because when you understand how Asians have always historically tried to be associated with whiteness, then you understand why, even though the majority of attacks on Asians were coming from quote unquote white Americans, they kept putting out videos making it seem as if it was Black folks that were attacking them, which was proven, right? Then you will understand why Asian Americans are quote unquote siding with white Americans as a way to take down affirmative action, even though look, let me take a look. Is it true that Asians are being discriminated against at Ivy League schools? Yes. Is it because of affirmative action? No. The reality of the situation is this, okay? When it comes to quote unquote white institutions, right? Asians, let me tell the truth. The vast majority of white folks do not want you overtaking these. They don't. They do not want Harvard to be majority Asian. They don't want Yale to be majority Asian. They don't. They do not want you guys to overtake these universities and campuses. That's the reality. And so, yes, they are quote unquote capping, but it's not because of affirmative action. In fact, the only reason why you're even able to get in there is because of affirmative action, because they have to look at your application. Now they've convinced you guys that affirmative action is what's holding you back. Here's what's going to happen. Once they convince you guys to essentially go out, because look, they already found the case. Once they finish using you guys to knock down affirmative action, you're going to start seeing the number of Asians drop in Ivy League schools, because without affirmative action, they won't even have to look at your application. They can just ignore you. But it's funny how nobody's talking about legacy admissions. But anyway, I'm going to address that on the third video, but let's start with this video, right? Okay. The video I'm about to play, because I have multiple videos I want to play to really guys to really show you guys what I'm talking about. So this video right here is an ad, a Chinese ad that was aired in China a couple of years ago, right? And it's still kind of online, right? And this ad is a Chinese ad for a detergent product. I want you guys to watch this, okay? And then I'll give you the commentary.
改变只需一颗俏比洗衣溶珠，俏比全国招生热线400-800-5086。
Now, when you look at this ad, right, it's very clear, right? You have a black man who's in China, and you can see the paint. So he's a blue-collar worker there, right? He goes to the Chinese lady. He's trying to flirt with her. She puts the detergent in his mouth. She pushes him into the washing machine, right? And then when he comes out, he's a Chinese dude, implying that essentially, this detergent product will wash away the blackness away, right? Now, this caused a backlash, right? From the international community. But people need to understand, this is something I had a lot of reasons, right? In China, in Asia, there is this thing where there is a glorification of having fairer skin. Right? In America, in the West, is whites, having being white. But in China, they don't use the term white, they use the term fair. So fairer skin, right? And typically that means having lighter skin. And so in China, really in Asia, there is a color hierarchy in which at the top you have the quote unquote pale skin Asians, right? Those who look like Japanese or South Koreans. And then at the bottom you have the darker skin Asians, right? Southeast Asians, Pacific Islanders. And it's so bad, they will look down on other Asians that have darker skin. So if they look down on other Asians that have darker skin, you can only imagine how they view the average black person. The reason why this video is important is because China, right, has been really making this thing where they've been trying to go out here and trying to make it seem as if they are friends of Africans, right? We are your friends, right? We're trying to invest and we're great. Now here's the thing. I do agree that, in order for Africa to industrialize, they're going to have to deal with China economically. But understand that these people are not your friends, right? They're just economic partners. These people are not your friends, right? Because look at it, because they look down on darker skinned people within Asia. So you can only imagine how they view the average black person. And so it's funny because they go out here and they quote unquote put this image to Africans, to black folks, we're a better part than these white Europeans. But the reality of the situation is in many ways they're even worse. And I'm gonna tell you guys why, right? On a geopolitical level, China is better in terms of economics, but on the sort of person to person level, China is worse. And I'm gonna tell you why. Even though we know that white Europeans and white folks are racist, right? The problem is that in the West, they at least try to put the image that they're not racist. Even though we know behind closed doors, they at least try. So you're not gonna see an ad like this in the West, right? Because it's a bad look. Now they'll call you a nigger behind closed doors, but out in open, they don't do that. In China, though, in Asia, they have no problem making it very clear that hey, if you're darker skin, you're shit. And in Asia, right, and it's something, because I was watching this video, you had someone that essentially went to China, and you had a Chinese guy who said, look, the same way white people look down on Asians is the same way Asians look down on black folks. I said, that's actually really accurate, right? Where the same people that will go around talking about anti-Asian hate from white folks from the West, right? Oh my God, they're treating Asians so bad. These white people are treating Chinese people so bad, but they'll turn around and call you a nigger. That's what I'm talking about. So the reason why it's very important is because for a very long time, I feel like in Africa, in the Black diaspora, there's been this, view that because China did not colonize the African continent, did not, take slaves, that there must be a better partner. But we're starting to realize that no, they're even more racist than white folks. Asians are probably even more racist, right? Now, they may be a better economic partner, but in terms of actually being friends, no, they're not. And the next video I'm about to play you is a video of and this can kind of better explain to you what I'm talking about. By the way, shout out to Vice. They did a documentary very well. But the next video I'm about to play you is a video of essentially a biracial girl in China. Right? In fact, let me just pull it real quickly. So this next video I'm about to play you, right? It's a video about, biracial kids who are in China, mixed children, right? And this is a girl who's, and what they'll do is they're going to take two mixed children, right? One child is half white and half Chinese. Another child is half black and half Chinese. And they're going to kind of show you in this documentary, I'm not going to play it, but they're going to kind of show you the different treatment, right? How for Chinese, for Asians in general, right? One of the main reasons why Chinese women tend to fantasize about white men is because, in China and Asia, there is this worship of having lighter skin. But also in Asia, they view white people as being superior to them, but they view black folks as being inferior to them. And you kind of see this play out. But let me put this real quick. Let's watch this.
我是挺想生一个混血宝宝的。
Being mixed race is often considered a privilege in China.
这个小孩绝对是我见过的最好看的混血宝宝。总之，他的颜值非常高。
Filters on Chinese social media apps give users the chance to see what they would look like with mixed features. But this mixed race fixation is centered around the Chinese and Caucasian look.
Eileen Gu grew up in the US, but often refers to herself as a Chinese girl.
Being half Chinese and half black is a different story. It's not uncommon to see anti-black sentiment in China.
They show alleged mistreatment by Chinese officials.
And by the way, for those who don't know, right, the video that they're playing right now is the video from the COVID-19 lockdown. So for those who don't know, right, when you had COVID breakout, and this mainly broke out in China, right, the Chinese got, and this was a black wake-up call. A lot of Africans who actually moved to China, because of all this, we're friends and whatever, right? And when the COVID-19 lockdown happened, right, there was a breakout in COVID-19 cases. Now, the reason for this, right, is because a lot of Chinese people in China were not following the procedures. And so what they did is they turned around and started blaming the black foreigners that live there. And it started to target them, right? Black Americans, and by the way, this is to everyone. So black Americans, black Africans, black Caribbeans, black people. If you were black in that country during this time, they were just taking you and kicking you out of your apartment. They will literally say, we don't serve. They were literally blocking them out. This happened in the COVID-19 thing. So that's kind of what they're showing.
Of African students and workers living in Guangzhou.
From blackface on national.
And by the way, another thing is that this video is also another thing that happened, right? Where China had essentially a skit where you had Chinese actors, right? That, now keep in mind, we know that blackface originated in the United States, right? Because black Americans, because other black people in the diaspora, like black Caribbeans, black Africans, we don't notice, but black Americans will tell you. Within, like, the idea of quote unquote wearing blackface came from the United States. And black Americans were the original subject to this, right? And so it's crazy how blackface, something that white Americans use against black Americans here. Now, it's now other black folks around the world. We don't know about it because this is something that's unique to black American history. But blackface, something that's very unique to black Americans, something that they faced here. You have people in China that are covering themselves in blackface and having a play about Africans. So this kind of shows you just how deep this goes.
National TV to commercials extolling the virtues of laundry detergent that washes away black features. Blackness is often stigmatized. Yet China has been Africa's largest trading partner for over a decade.
And that's the sort of irony, right? Is that they go to Africa and say, well, you're your friends. And that's what I said, look, to be honest, Africans, we don't really trust these folks. We don't. We don't really trust Chinese. Like, we would rather deal with Black Americans. We would rather deal with the Black diaspora because we know they're Black. But we know these Asians, like, at the end of the day, worship whiteness.
With transactions rising to a record high of 254 billion in 2021, which has led to much more than just the exchange of trade.
我是出生在乌干达，然后2岁搬到了北京以后，就一直在北京生活。我父亲他本身他是一个商人，所以他经常会做就是中非的贸易。然后他之前就是通过工作的方式，然后就认识了我妈妈，然后他们相恋了以后就有了我。我2岁以后，然后我爸爸就带着我妈去北京，就是来看望我爷爷奶奶。然后我爸就是带着我在爷爷奶奶这边，因为他希望我能在北京接受教育。我妈妈和我爸爸就在我大概4、5岁左右，他们就离婚了，所以之后就他也没有再来过中国。
Eden is a fashion designer and model. She thinks of
it. Guys, before I continue, right? Because I feel like this is very important. I feel like in order for us to really understand how the world works, we have to understand other. Because the reason why I'm talking about this because for the past couple of months, we have been having Asians in America screaming about anti-Asian hate, which is ironic to me. When this is how they treat Black, the reason why the whole anti-Asian hate thing was so funny is because people who actually know Asians and know about the culture know how much they look down on darker skin and how racist they are towards Black people around the world, within their own country, even when they're in the West. So for them to be screaming anti-Asian hate and try to make it seem as if it's Black folks, Black Americans who are attacking them, no. We need to actually talk about how Asians really operate within their own communities. And what they're going to show you, so this is, this woman, she's half Black and half Chinese. And you're going to see her experience compared to another biracial who's half white and half Chinese. And we're going to talk, we're going to discuss this. And then the next video is going to be another quote-unquote incident of anti-Asian hate. We're going to get to that, but let's get into it.
Herself as a typical Beijing girl. But not everyone sees her that way.
我有一次有一个朋友，就是这个男生，但是他有一次说了一句话，就让我觉得挺傻的。他就说：“哎，我觉得你最近就是越来越好看了。你要是那个白人混血，你就完美了。”
You see that? I was out here, right? You can see it. If you are half white, you will be perfect. Okay? If you were half white, you'll be perfect. Now, why does this matter, right? Whenever you will have a conversation, right, with an Asian person, like, why is it that, Asian women are just chasing white dudes? Why are y'all obsessing over white skin? Where's it come from? Well, it's because of our culture, right? It's because we're not trying to intermix with you Negroes. Right? We're not trying to be what you Negroes out here. Like, this is what we hear. They always, whenever Black folks tell Asians, hey, why is it that you guys tend to look down darker skin? Why is it that you guys are known for behaving this way towards, folks who are half Black, right? Or towards Blasians? Why do you guys always look down on Blasians? And what we get is, well, it's because of our culture, it's because of this, but here's the problem, right? This only applies to Blasians, right? If you are a Asian, if you're half white and half Asian, typically you're more accepted, right? Tab Liquor says here that lives in Japan and half foods had issues. That's true. But here's the thing. Even when it comes to the half foods, right, there's a racial component. If you are half white and half Japanese, you're going to be better treated compared to if you're half Black. Okay, so it's the same thing. But let's go. But keep in mind, guys. So in China, it's already being told, look, it's not that we're against race mixing. It's that we're against race mixing with quote-unquote folks of quote-unquote Black descent.
就这句话我觉得听起来超级有问题，但当时我就回了一个呵呵，他自己完全没有觉得这有问题。
Guangzhou in the south of China plays host to one of Asia's largest African migrant populations. Although accurate data is scarce, it's estimated that anywhere up to around 500,000 African migrants live in China. Many settle down and start families with their local partners.
自我有记忆来，我就能感觉到我跟就是别人不太一样。因为就是不管去哪里，然后只要是公共场所，就是大家看到我就会多看一眼，然后就是会想摸我的头发呀，或者就是问我会不会说中文啊这些。
According to researchers, there's been a history of anti-black racism in China dating back to the 17th century, when Chinese aristocrats participated in the Indian Ocean slave trade. But more recently,
that's also another thing that is also unknown, because in the United States we know about slavery, and from Jamaica to Haiti, the Bahamas, Black Americans, right? But one thing I was shocked about, which I learned, was like, when it came to China, right, like the document says, right, they didn't participate as much as of course Europeans, but their hands were not clean when it came to slavery too. So so keep that in mind.
Netizens have become anxious about Chineseness after proposed changes to the permanent residency requirements were announced in 2020 to make it easier for foreigners to settle in the country. The proposal was met with controversy from a generation who sacrificed having more children for economic growth under the one-child policy, and it boosted a growing nationalist sentiment in the country.
There is this link between anti-Black racism and growing Chinese nationalism, and especially a kind of racial.
And just to kind of give more context to what this Chinese girl is saying, right? It's only when it comes to Black folks. Let me right. This only applies to Black people. So even though, and it's something I'm gonna give an example. There is a video online of a white man from South Africa, right? His YouTube channel is Serpensa. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you have this white dude who from South Africa. He moved from South Africa and moved to China. Right now, he's a white guy, right? And he talks about how he will hear Chinese people record them saying this to him, right? This dude goes to China, gets married to a Chinese girl, and he talks about how everywhere he would go, right, he will get treated amazingly, because even though he's from South Africa, because he's a white dude, everyone assumes that he's from America. So he gets, quote unquote, white privilege in an Asian country, right? He gets treated really well. And the reason why he talks about it, because coming from a country like South Africa, where the complicated history, it makes him feel uncomfortable, because he's like, wait a minute, okay, white people have done a lot of shit to China, right? We invaded your countries, right? We essentially took away Macau, took away Hong Kong, took away Taiwan. We essentially forced you guys through the 100 years of humiliation, right? We essentially almost colonized you guys. We have destroyed you guys, and yet you're gonna treat a white person this good, but the Black person that's next to me who's done nothing to you guys, you're gonna treat him like that. And that's what he was talking, because for him as a white dude, it made him feel uncomfortable, because even though he's a white guy from South Africa, he's not dumb. He's educated. He knows the history of Kwanzaa. He knows how Europeans invaded China. And so imagine you being a white person. You're like, okay, I know that the people that look like me fucked you over. And I know that this Black person right here next to me did nothing to you. But yet you're treating the Black person like shit, but you're treating me like a god, even though I fucking destroyed your country. And so when you look at that, you realize whenever you hear Asians or Chinese talk to you about, culture and national, what they're really saying is, we don't like you Negroes, okay? Because if you ask any white person, white folks, okay, when they're in these Asian areas, when they're in the countries, right, they're loved, they're accepted. In fact, Asians view it as, quote unquote, climbing the racial ladder. So it's very important here. So don't ever let some random Asian person gaslight you and say, oh, it's because of our culture. No, it's because you're Black.
nationalism. It's the imagination of the nation as a biologically related and reproductive unit. They said it's unfair for foreigners to acquire Chinese nationality when we have so many Chinese babies who were aborted. Blackness and also other kinds of foreignness became the scapegoat for collective trauma of the Chinese nation.
凡是有黑人血缘的孩子，他的肤色
Anyone who is black mixed, his or her skin color is naturally dark. Now, here's the thing. Now, here's the thing. When you push now here's the thing, guys. Remember, in Asia, in China, they don't have the same sort of cancel culture we have here in America. So here in America, we know how white folks, behind closed doors, they'll call you a nigger and everything. But when they're out in public, they know to behave themselves because of cancel culture, right? We know this. That's the reason why you'll see a white liberal who's, oh my God, I'm pro, I love black people. Behind closed doors, he's calling you a nigger. But in China, that does not exist. There is no cancel culture. So a lot of times, if you ask a Chinese person how they view black folks, they will tell you. They're not going to beat around, but they will tell you to your face, yeah, these folks are scary. They're ugly. I don't want to deal with them. So, and also they'll be honest, like, look, the reason why we don't like Blasians is because typically when we intermix with quote unquote black people, the kids come out darker. But if we intermix with white folks, the kids come out with lighter skin. So come on, let's be honest. Let's get to it.
色都是偏深的啊，所以呢，我这里用一个带引号的黑二代啊。
The new proposal was actually not that radical. It removed some hurdles for foreigners to apply for permanent residency in China. Opponents of the bill believe that the new regulations will encourage immigration of undesirable foreigners. And
now here's the thing, right? What did she just say? Undesirable foreigner. This is why, because the reason why this matters, you have to understand the double speak that Asians use, right? You have to understand, because the next video I'm going to cover is about a sort of quote unquote anti-Asian racism, where a quote unquote white person was racist towards an Asian person, and they want to gaslight you about anti-Asian. That's why it's important for us to understand how they operate within their own countries. So when they pull this game of anti-racism, we can check them. Okay, they don't have a problem with foreigners. They have a problem with black foreigners, with darker skinned foreigners. And Serpentsa, the quote-unquote white dude from South Africa, talked about is that if you're a white person going to China, you're celebrating, right? You are a good foreigner, right? You're going to bless China. You're going to bless Asia. But if you're black, even if you're black American, it's nothing too, right? You could be a black person with quote-unquote Western citizenship. You could be a black American, right? And you're going to China with a white American. Even though a black American and a white American, even though black Americans equally participated in building up the United States, when they view you guys, they're going to say, okay, this black American is a Negro, you don't matter. This white American, yes, you are good to China. Come on.
By which they really mean darker skin, especially foreign men.
有一些黑人呢，他们在这边留下孩子之后，他们人就走了啊，也不知道去哪儿了，这会导致呢，我们很多国内的女性同胞啊，单身一个人，还带着个混血孩子啊，他将面临很多问题。
These sentiments were especially related to the perceived influx of African men in China.
Black men. Okay, let's get right. Black men. Y'all, I've said it before. And this is another reason why I went so hard on the passport, bro. Guys, look, you guys don't understand how these other countries really view black people, especially black men internationally. No other group of, and this is something I've noticed, right? Every other group of men does not want black men fucking their women. It's almost exclusively to black men. I've noticed this, right? Whether it's Chinese men, Hispanic men, Arab men, white men, they have no problem intermixing with each other. But as soon as a black man is involved, as soon as a black man is dealing with their women, that's a problem. Everywhere black men go, your dick is being watched. It doesn't matter if you're in Asia. It doesn't matter if you're in fucking Europe, right? Every other group of men view black men as a sexual threat. Every other group of men, wherever you go, they're watching. Now, a white dude can go now. this is what's so crazy about this documentary, right? The vast majority of Chinese women who deal with foreigners deal with white men. This is what they don't tell you about, right? When the vast majority of Chinese women, right, when they deal with quote unquote foreign men, they typically deal with white men. And there's a lot of quote unquote stories of white men who will go up there, knock up Asian females, right, and leave their ass behind. But because white people, right, are essentially looked up on, and white people are viewed as being superior to Chinese and Asia, they're gonna pass. But your black ass, if you go over there, as soon as they see, I say, hold up, nigga, what you doing? Get your hands off this Chinese girl. So when these passport niggas, be honest, okay? These dudes are not, they don't want you fucking, they don't want black men fucking the women. Let's be honest here.
China in recent years, especially in the city of Guangzhou, and they're sort of perpetuating the racist myth that black African men are sexual predators, irresponsible.
Now, guys, doesn't this sound like what we heard here in America, right? That black men are sexually responsible, they have big dicks, they'll make you single mothers, right? Isn't that the same narrative that white men say here? Isn't that the same narrative that white men have been perpetuating here in the United States as a way to quote unquote keep us away from white women? Now you have guys in Asian men saying the same shit. Oh, Ling, you better not deal with those black dudes over there, okay? They'll knock you up. They'll make you a single mother. They're no good. Come on, y'all.
Husbands and fathers and people who brought HIV/AIDS into China. Many.
My black man, okay. So when y'all talk about passport bros, remember how these other groups really view y'all. Let me go ahead.
Of the Africans in Guangzhou were, in fact, short-term traders, entrepreneurs, owners of small businesses who have actually contributed a great deal to the Chinese economy. And China's current visa requirements pose an onerous burden on them. And even if some of them have married a Chinese person, they may not be able to stay in China for very long and to form a stable family.
And keep in mind, okay, this is very important here, okay? Black people are not the majority of foreigners, okay? The vast majority of foreigners in China are not black. In fact, I would say a large than the majority are white. But notice how the white foreigners are never talked about, right? The white foreigners never get picked on. The white foreigners, white men can go to China and knock up a bunch of Asian chicks, Chinese females, leave them as single mothers, nothing happens. White men can, and Serpents, the white guy from South Africa, talked about this, right? He would literally be in a restaurant and you will have Chinese folks going to him asking him for a photo. They literally have privilege in these countries, right? To a point at which, like, you will literally have stories of quote-unquote white men, white foreigners abusing locals, but the Chinese government does nothing because, once again, they don't want to, quote-unquote upset Western governments. They understand if we go after a white dude in China, there will be real consequences from the West. There will be real consequences from the quote-unquote, the globe because, let's keep it real. The United States and the Western world lead the globe. Right, and America still relies economically on the West, on the United States. So they know not to mess with white dudes. They know not to mess with white foreigners. But when it comes to black folks, even if you're a black American, even if you have an American passport, oh, you nick, they will treat you like shit.
洗衣机的那个广告就是一个黑人进去以后，然后就洗出一个好像是亚洲人吧，还是白人，就是我当时就感觉说这个广告真的就是非常非常的奇怪，因为它从侧面的含义感觉就好像说黑人是一个脏的还是怎么样，然后我也能经常看到就是说如果在社交媒体上
Now guys, this right here is on the Weibo app, right? And I want you guys to read some of these comments because if I were to take some of these comments, right, and translate them to English and said, okay, who do you think wrote these comments? Most black folks would assume, oh, it was a white person. What if I told you these were all Asians? What if I told you, all these comments that have the N-word, calling folks chimpanzees, monkeys, were actually Chinese people, Asians writing this? You'd be shocked, right? Remember, so I told you, when Asians, Chinese, they have no problem with interracial marriage. They have no problem with mixing as long as Black people are not a part of the mix. They love interracial marriage. They love mixing when it's with white people, right? When Black folks are there, you will hear, when it's a Black person that's involved in interracial marriages, you will hear all kinds of vile shit. Look at this comment right here, right? So ugly and black, like a chimpanzee, not going to be smart anyways. You will only be mocked by us Chinese. And he's right, right? The person is right, that Blasians in China, in Asia, look down upon, right? If you're someone darker skin, look that up. Now here's the thing: if this was a Asian, half white, half Chinese, we praise. But I want you guys to let's read some of these comments.
谈论到黑人的话，下面的评论一般都会是什么样子？然后，对我经常就会看到一些就是。
Okay, here's another one, right? N-word, don't come to China. Go to America or Africa, okay? It's very important here. So even if you're a Black American, even if you have that quote-unquote American citizenship, you're still a nigger. Now think about this, okay? The N-word, as it is regularly used, originated here in the United States. This is the reason why I think Pan-Africanism is mad, because until we understand, until Black folks around the world realize that we only have each other, we're not going to understand this, right? Imagine you being a Black person from Africa. You leave Uganda, you go to China, right? Now, you don't know about the quote-unquote history of Black Americans. You don't know about blackface and the N-word when it comes to Black Americans. All you know is that as a person in Uganda, we were colonized, and I'm just going to China, right? You go to this country, you maybe get where the Chinese go, right? And on social media, you have Chinese people call you the N-word. You're not going to understand what's happening to you. Now, a Black American who knows where that word came from knows what's going on. How did the N-word, a word that was originally created here in America to the great Black Americans, how did this word make its way all the way to China? Because when the Western nations went over there to invest and build up Asians, they did not just bring over economics, okay? The same anti-Black racism that white Europeans have here, they brought that over there too. But let's keep going.
我觉得真的是非常恶毒的话。关注我的人比较少，但偶尔我还是会收到私信，就是说那种我求你滚回非洲吧，就这种。然后，但是我看到最多的，其实我觉得是那些就是比如说在跟黑人谈恋爱的女孩，然后他们发了他们的自拍。
And remember, guys, those vile comments you saw is in response to a Chinese girl, Chinese women posting photos. So those vile comments that you saw, right, is it essentially, right, is a response to Chinese women posting photos with Black men. Now, keep in mind, they don't care if you're Black American. That doesn't matter. Because when you go over there, you're just Black to them. In fact, a white American and a Black American will enter the same shop. And this is what white guys talk about, right? They will travel with the Black American friends to these areas, right? And you'll have these racial incidents where the white person gets treated well, the Black American is treated like shit. Come on, y'all. So when I was having my quote-unquote rant about Paso Bros, it's not because I was against guys going overseas, because I was trying to say dudes need to start being honest about how Black people, Black men are viewed in these countries. Non-Black men do not want you fucking their women. Let's be honest here, guys. Okay, when you're taking your passports to Thailand, Japan, that's great. These non-Black dudes, they don't want you fucking, they don't want you fucking their women. Yes, white guys get a pass. Yes, white dudes get a pass, but you don't. We gotta be honest here.
然后下面就会有很多人去一直攻击黑人。
Now, Tab look at husband, like he said, so why don't Africans treat them the same way on the continent? Get Africa. Well, it's very simple. You know, the reason is because, that's all right. Africa is next in line for industrial, right? They're essentially next in line to be the center of the global economy. In fact, the 22nd century is going to be the African century. But here's the thing. In order for them to really rise and take over, they need to industrialize. And industrialization, you need someone else to begin the process with you. I'm going to give you an example. China, right? The United States helped China industrialize, right? America, it was Black American slaves, right? And quote unquote, the slave economy that helped the United States and the West industrialize. You can't do it on your own. So when it came to China, they were able to get Western Europeans to go over there and essentially industrialize the country and help them grow. Same thing with Japan, South Korea. Africa, you need someone to quote unquote help you industrialize. They have the population, they have the resources. The only thing that they're missing is the infrastructure and technology. And that's what China's providing them. That's what they're tolerating them. But my thing is that Black Africans need to understand that these people are just economic partners. They're not your friends, okay? You need to do to Chinese people what Chinese people did to Americans, right? I'm going to give you an example. China was able to convince white Americans to come in there and invest, right? And essentially placate to them. And as soon as China essentially was in a good economic position, they said, fuck you, America, and they went their own way. Do the same thing to the Chinese, okay? Deal with them as long as you have to for economic reasons. But once you industrialize, once you no longer need them economically, cut the Asian ass off, the yellow ass off. They're not your friends. They're in my opinion, Asians, Chinese folks, they're nothing more than a means to an end. That's it. They're nothing more than a means to an end. Because at the end of the day, your true friends are the Black diaspora. Black Americans are your true friends. Black Caribbeans are your true friends. Black folks around the world are your true friends. These Chinese yellow folks are not your friends. They're just there for economic reasons. Use them, okay? And when you don't need them anymore, cut them off. So, Tab Liquor, that's the answer to your question.
然后是攻击那个跟黑人谈恋爱的女孩，就会叫她媚黑婊啊，然后会说什么你们生小孩那个他就跑了啊之类的，就这种话。这个我还是能看到挺多，就是尤其是比如说小红书上那种发自己就是混血女儿，然后是个白人女孩的话，经常下面评论就都是那种哇好可爱，就是小洋娃娃，然后什么的。
苏菲亚不仅颜值很高，她的性格也非常好。
然后，但是如果是一个就是黑人混血小孩的话，下面可能就经常。
Not cute at all. The blood is so. No, guys, right now, these are the comments. This is very important. Okay, these are the comments that are being said in regards to Blasians, right? Mixed kids that are half Black. Now, after this, they're gonna show you Asians and how. So look at how they're reacting to quote unquote Blasian kids in China, right? Kids that are half Chinese and half Black, right? Then we're gonna go over and they're gonna show you white kids, right? White mixed kids, so kids who are half white and half Chinese. And I want you to look at how the different treatment. This is so to watch.
是那种说他爸还在这儿吗？然后那个或者是说什么，天哪，就是怎么做到，就是怎么敢和黑人，就是这种，就类似于这样的话。
How dare you be with Black people? Wow. Now, guys. That's how they treat the Blasians, right? The half Black, half Chinese kids. Now here, you're gonna see a story of a Asian, half white, half Chinese, and I want you to see the different treatment.
Of course, not all mixed race experiences in China are the same. Audrey is also mixed race, but has led a very different life.
我是一个中美混血，我的父亲是美国人，我的母亲是美国人。
Yeah, so her father is a white American and her mother is Chinese. So for those who wonder why Asian girls are going for white so hard, because they view that as not, it's not just that Asians view white folks as being superior to them, but they also view having lighter skin as being superior. So for her, getting with a white dude is you get to climb the quote-unquote racial ladder to be with a quote-unquote superior group, quote-unquote white men, and you get to have a child who has lighter skin. So when you understand the dynamics, then it makes sense. But let's go ahead.
但是他其实是中国人。我是在美国出生的，在宾夕法尼亚，然后很小就来到了北京。我觉得我从小就对于自己混血儿的身份就比较敏感。我决定学习舞蹈， 之后，我就去了一个私立的舞蹈学校。
Now, guys, if you look at her, okay, she looks like a white woman. So keep this in mind.
我长得就是一个外国人的面孔，然后其他的孩子都是可能2、3线城市来的，没有北京人。当时的校长还比较喜欢我，因为我小的时候。
Now, she said it, right? The principal back then liked me more. This in China, right? Because I'm white, round, and fat. But what was really going on is you're white, right? In other words, you are quote unquote improving the race, right? You know, white folks are superior to Asians. We view you as superior. Black people are inferior to us. And so the fact that a Chinese girl was able to get with a white American dude and have this half white, half black kid, half white, half Asian kid, because you have white blood in you, you are now better than the average Chinese person. And you see how, now think about it, talk about her compared to the other Blasian kid. Keep this in mind.
又白又圆又胖，然后可能他们都觉得挺可爱的，然后他还对我的关照又比较多，所以这个可能跟我混血儿的身份它是有直接关系的。确实从小就会有人。
Now, this is very important. This is why it matters, right? And this kind of relates back to the whole Meghan Markle situation where you had a woman who because she did not look stereotypical black, she did not have to face anti-black racism. Look at how, and by the way, I believe her too. This girl is half white and half Chinese, right? And her parents, you know, her quote-unquote Asian family will tell her that, hey, you know, mixed people are smart, mixed people are better, mixed people are this and that, right? Now, do they actually believe that? No, because we saw how they were treating the Blasian kids. Really what they're saying is, because you're half white, you're better than the average Chinese person. But the other Blasian kid, because they're half black, they are lower and lesser than the average Chinese person. So we got, keep in mind, guys, pay attention.
跟我说，哎呀，混血儿聪明，然后那个父母双方离得越远，越聪明，越好看什么的，然后就说混血儿有多么神啊。
Right? Yeah, praising her, right? You know, she's saying it, right? They will praise her so much for being mixed, right? But really, they were praising her for being half white. That's really what it was. And the crazy part is, it was so blatant that even she knew that, because she talks about it. Even she knew that, hey, it's because I'm half white. So you on.
什么的，我也就听听就算了。
Similarly, mixed-race skier Eileen Gu still managed to find praise, national pride, and sponsorship.
Yeah, and by the way, for those who don't know, Eileen Gu essentially is a half Chinese, half white, quote-unquote skier. She switched over from America to China, and she was, man, Chinese people loved this girl. Like when she was these competitions, they were just hugging her. And the reason is very simple. She was half white. And so having a half white, half Chinese person represent them was like, oh, we're better in the race. We're getting closer to whiteness.
Deals in China after winning 3 Olympic medals.
All of the stardom comes with heavy pressure of being half Chinese and half American at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions.
She grew up in the States, but switched her allegiance to competing for China when she was 15.
因为近期很多比较有名的混血儿被推上了这个国际舞台，从而我们这个人群就更被关注。就比如说有一次我在逛商场的时候，然后有一个人就说：“哎，你是谷爱凌吗？”现在我们需要像她这样的 idol， 她是真的非常的优秀。同时呢，我又很羡慕说她能够被
Now, this is very important, right? Chinese people accept her as Chinese. Even though, and this is very important because we would have and this is coming to its end, so it's almost done, but as I go and play the final video, of quote unquote an anti-Asian hate incident, right? And you have these Asians coming together, oh my God, these white people are just so anti-Asian. But hold on, Ching. How about how you guys treat other Black folks though? So now that we understand the context of how Asians operate within their home countries and how they treat whites, Blacks, right? How much the amount of anti-Black racism, the amount of white worship. Then when we go to the last video, then we can see why this whole anti-Asian shit they want to pull in America is BS. But let's just finish real quick.
人去认可他是一个中国人。
At a time when social media is full of mixed-race Eurasian filters and a preference for Western beauty standards, Audrey was cast as the female lead in Jay Chou's music video.
大众眼里的混血儿的话，我的想法是，就我的感觉是哈，就你经常你无论是
Yeah, so that's around the end of the video, but yeah, so mixed race features are very much so the idea of being mixed race is very trendy in China, right? To the point at which they allow you to actually change your features. But here's the thing, it's always Eurasian, it's always Asian and European together. It's never anything else. So keep that in mind. Now let's go to the last video here. So that video was very important because it gave you the context of how Asians view, how they operate within their own communities, right? Within their own group, how they view Black, how they view white folks. Now that we understand the context, let's look at this incident real quickly, and then we'll dive into it.
Many Asian Americans growing up in America will tell you that they were often singled out and ridiculed for the way they looked, made fun of by children, turning up their eyes at them, or just ridiculing Asian cultures by mocking their languages. Well, last week, the chancellor of a university did the latter during a commencement ceremony speech. Listen.
Well, all I can say is, that's sort of my Asian version of his.
That's the Purdue University.
Now, okay, so let's stop there, okay? So you guys get the gist of it, right? So you essentially have Purdue University, right, a college, and the chancellor, who is essentially the head of the university, right, during the sort of, commencement, the sort of graduation, right, he hops on stage and he essentially makes Asian jokes, right? We know these jokes, right? Ching chong ching. So he essentially makes those jokes, right? And of course, Asian Americans want to get triggered. Oh my God, this is anti-Asian hate. These white people. Now here's the thing. If we did not know about how Asians operate within their own countries, if we did not know the amount of anti-Black racism, the amount of this white worship they have within their own culture and country, right? Then we would essentially take these narratives seriously. So you will have someone from Japan and China who, looks down on Blasian, looks down on Black folks, right? Views Black people as below them, right? Views white folks above them, right? Has anti-Black racism, anti-Black culture. And then when they come to America, when these same white people who they worship then treat them badly, then they want to talk about anti-Asian hate. And this is the problem, and this is what needs to be fucking called out. My view on the whole anti-Asian has changed. I feel like, in my opinion, we need to stop giving that shit credence, because the way I view it is this. If you have an entire culture of worshiping lighter skin, if you have an entire culture of worshiping white Europeans, if you have an entire culture of pedestalizing whiteness and denigrating Blackness, don't turn around and complain and cry anti-Asian hate when the same white people that you pedestalize are calling you ching chong ching. Don't do that. Because when you do that, you lose all credibility to me. And yet you guys wonder why these other minority groups don't take y'all. We really don't. We don't take y'all seriously. Because 9 out of 10 times, you guys have no problem being model minorities, being white adjacent, siding with white family. You guys literally right now, you guys are literally siding with white Americans trying to take down affirmative action. And it was so funny. The reason why I love this incident, right, is because this contradicts the whole anti-Asian narrative we've been seeing in America. Because they've been trying so hard to paint Black Americans as being the main portrayers of anti-Asian hate, when the reality of the situation is that the stats are very clear. Most of the anti-Asian hate is coming from white folks. But because white people have the power, and because Asians tend to pedestalize white folks, they're not going to call it out because they understand that their model minority status is predicated on them aligning more whiteness. So if they were to turn around and criticize whiteness, criticize the white society, their fear is that those same white folks will turn around and do what he just did, call them ching chong ching, and essentially cut them off. That's what it's about. So the best thing for them to do is to go and attack Black people and make it seem as if we're the ones attacking Asians as a way to get closer to whiteness. But it's not working, boo. It's not. It's not working. These white folks are making it clear, we do not want you Asians in Harvard. We don't. They do not want Asians overtaking these Ivy League schools. They don't. They don't want Asia overtaking the economies. I'm going to give you an example, right? The Joe Biden, had his little tour in South Korea and Japan. Right, talking about we're allies. Joe Biden and the Democrats recently just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which will essentially provide billions of dollars in subsidies to American corporations. But most importantly, this will essentially bring chip manufacturing back to America. Here's the thing, though, guys: the biggest beneficiaries of chip manufacturing have been Asian countries like South Korea and Japan. So this Inflation Reduction Act could potentially destroy the economies of South Korea, Japan, and other Asian countries, including China. So now these Asian nations, right, that have been pandering to the West, are like, oh my God, Joe Biden, this is not fair. No. What Joe Biden is doing is correct because you Asians have become too comfortable. Because you guys were not treated like Black folks internationally, you guys really started to believe that you're white. You really started to believe that, quote unquote, you are superior than Black folks. But now, white folks let you know, white people letting you know, hold up, ching chong ching. We may prefer you over these Negroes, but you're not one of us. You're still Mongoloid. You're still Oriental, right? And so it was so funny that I saw a video of a Chinese man who essentially said it perfectly. He said the same way white people look down on Asians is the same way Asians look down on everyone else, especially Black folks. And when you think about that, it makes sense. So they will worship whiteness, they will attack Black folks, do all this kind of pedestalizing of whiteness in the societies everywhere. And then complain when the same people they worship call them ching chong ching or essentially put them in their place. Because if you pedestalize someone, then what does that make you? They never think about this, right? If I pedestalize a group of people, what does that make you, right? Because if you make someone a star, you become their fan. And now you have China and Japan and South Korea and these East Asian, white adjacent Asian countries complaining that the Western world, that these quote unquote white Europeans, right, are trying to undermine their economies, complain that America wants to keep Asians below them, which I have no problem with. I say, what's the fucking difference? Like, what's the fucking difference really, right? Because when we're dealing with white folks, we already know what to expect from them. But I think the point is that when it came to Asians, we expect that because Asians went through, colonization, that they will be able to sympathize, they'll have a sympathy. But no, they choose to allow white folks. So it's like, at least in the West, they at least try to pretend to not be racist. You guys are out of control. Blame with it. But with that being said, y'all, I think I'm gonna leave it up there. I've kind of given my dialogue, but that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. Shout out to those subscribed, to my subscribers who just came through. I'm really trying to upgrade the quality of my channel, do it more professionally. Shout out to y'all. Another thing I'm also gonna cover is whether or not Horn of Africans are black. That's another upload that's coming, because when we think about, Horn of Africans, Somalia, Djiboutians, Eritreans, Ethiopians, these people essentially are mixed with Arabs. And so there's always not, I'm not talking about East Africans, right? East Africans are like Ugandans and Kenyans. These are black folks, they're undeniably black. I'm talking about countries that make up the Horn of Africa, the quote unquote mixed folks, right? The mixed black folks. And why I believe really they shouldn't even be allowed to be called black. That's a whole other conversation. But what I mean, so y'all, this is kind of my view on this. But yeah, whenever an Asian person tries to talk to you about anti-Asian hate, ask them, hey, how do Asians view black folks? How do Asians treat black people in their own countries? How do Asians view darker skinned people? Okay? Have that conversation, because this gaslighting about anti-Asian hate, that needs to be stopped. And by the way, this chancellor is still there. Despite all the calls for him to get fired, he's still there. Because what Asians need to understand, okay, the only reason why they got the anti-Asian hate bill through, the only reason why they're pushing the whole anti-Asian hate is because you guys framed it as attacking black Americans. But trust me, as soon as a white person does the same thing, they're not going to do shit. In fact, they'll tell you to get over it, which was happening. And y'all can go and cry with your, cry and say, oh my God, I don't care. You pedestalize people, don't complain when they treat you like shit. It is what it is. That's what you deserve. And so, really, in my opinion, what y'all need to understand is, okay, you guys siding with white folks is going to backfire greatly, both geopolitically in terms of the United States and Europeans kind of turning more against Asia. Is going to backfire domestically, because once they are finished using you Asians to take out affirmative action, you're going to start seeing a drop of Asians. Because again, look, guys, this guy, right, who is a chancellor, he represents the majority of people who are in Harvard and these Ivy League schools. The people who are the people who are sort of deciding who gets into Harvard are people like him. You think affirmative action is a reason why he doesn't want Asians over there? When affirmative action, when they're done using you Asians to take out affirmative actions, you're going to see a drop in y'all being, because affirmative action forced them to at least look at your application. Without affirmative action in place, they'll just throw it away. They won't even look at y'all. In fact, you had a recent study where if affirmative, that came out, which is like, if affirmative action gets taken down, you can see close to like a massive drop in Asians going to Ivy League schools. And I said, yeah, I very much believe that. And when that happens, I better not see a single Asian online talk to. I better not see y'all. I better not see you guys talking about anti-Asian hate. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it up there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you share, subscribe, like the video, and hammer out.